Our guest today is Ariane from Lifespan. This whole concept today, this is career conversation. So this is really meant to be informal and an opportunity to really tap the resources. So we are very fortunate that we have so many awesome employers that want to have these conversations, not only because they're hoping to have good, strong candidates for their company, but also just to support our students and our alumni. And I think that's a really great gift that we have. Ariane is a recruiter at Lifespan, and I'm going to say you have about 10 years of recruitment experience and about 2 years at Lifespan.
Yep, you got it, exactly.
All right. So Ariane, tell us a little bit about your background, because Lifespan's been 2 years, but then once again, 10 years of recruitment, a lot of really good experience in helping people find the right fit for positions.
Yep, exactly. So I'm going to be totally honest here. I was a communications major in college. And about halfway through, I kind of realized I didn't want to do what I set out to do. But then I still had no idea what I wanted to do. So I graduated with a degree because I wanted a degree, but was a little bit kind of lost for a little while. Started off in a customer service position. Ended up being an insurance agent. It just kind of fell into it. And while I was with that company, I actually started helping my supervisor interview people, and it was fun. I kind of liked it. 2008 recession hit, so I got laid off. Took another job just to have a job, and started putting my resume out there. And I got really lucky, and a recruiter from K-Force reached out to me. And K-Force is a staffing firm. They do temporary staffing and permanent placement staffing. So we'll circle back to that in a bit. And I said, well, I kind of liked interviewing people. Let me see what this is about. And I fell in love with it. So I started off in business development, and that for me wasn't the best fit, but I made my way into recruiting. And recruited for 10 years or 8 years there. And then took an opportunity with Lifespan, which I am so happy that I have a background in temp staffing, because when you're recruiting for temporary candidates or contractors and consultants, it is fast paced. It is high volume. And I am back in it again right now with recruiting for our field hospital. So this is exciting.
Yeah, so that's one of my big questions. I'm curious about the juxtaposition. Like, what does an average recruitment life cycle look like, and what does it look like right now today?
So typically, recruiters, we're reading resumes from applicants. We're reaching out to you, whether we've found you on LinkedIn or Monster or Indeed, wherever. And we're setting up phone screens or in-person interviews and getting a chance to get to know you a bit. And if all goes well, we'll share your resume with the hiring manager. The hiring manager will let us know if they want to interview you. And we're usually telling the hiring manager about our experience talking with you too, because I'm a big believer that your resume is the first page in your book. It's definitely not going to tell me the whole story. And I love talking with people. And when I hear the really interesting stories about how you found your path, that I like to bring that to the hiring managers. Once the hiring managers decide to interview, sometimes it's 1 or 2 interviews, sometimes more. We could get into that later. And then we're the ones providing offers and helping people through the onboarding process, typically. When it comes to temp staffing or something like this with the field hospital, we're doing all of that in a very small amount of time. So I think most of the people that have talked to me this week have realized I can talk very, very quickly and give you a ton of information in a short amount of time. And the interesting part about that is that we have to make really fast decisions. And kind of trust our guts a bit, but really kind of hone in on the real important parts of what's it's gonna take to get this job done well.
So how has now changed as far as volume? Like, all right, Lifespan, I always see lots of postings for Lifespan. Are you guys still hiring? I know you mentioned the field hospital. Like, is this a lot of hiring? Like, give me a little perspective on it.
So I don't have all the numbers for our field hospital right now, but just for an example, I'm responsible for 30 positions.
Okay.
I typically do, for the type of work that I do, I typically hire 20 to 25 people a month. So that gives you, yeah. And I know one of my colleagues on the nursing side, I think he's might have 100. So I lucked out. So volume's definitely up with that, but we are still Lifespan is still hiring through other parts, whether it's our behavioral health side, other medical sides, even administrative and accounting, those pieces as well. I could go into all of them, but you get the gist.
Right. It's nice to have a organization that has a lot of different opportunities. Like there's a kind of always a side that's kind of flexing and the side that is growing at the same time.
Exactly.
So I have a whole list of questions, but it's way better from you all. Let me open it up. This really is truly conversational. What questions do you have for Ariane? And you can unmute yourselves and just ask. There is a chat feature. So at the bottom of all your screens, you should see a series of little circles, and there's a little chat bubble. So if you're more comfortable writing it, I'll happily read it out, whatever works for you.
Don't make me try to do too much with technology right now.
No, I'll do that.
I've had it.
Hi, Ariane. Oh, I'm sorry.
You can go.
Hey, Ashley.
How are you?
I know you. How are you?
Well, you know my name, but here's my face. A little bit different than the office face that I usually have. But it's good to finally see you in person.
Likewise.
I wanted to ask you some questions on the best ways for students to find out about opportunities with Lifespan. I know that most of them are always posted up on the careers page, but I know that there are so many different segments of Lifespan and so many different things that our students can do. I was just in touch with Elizabeth Clegg this afternoon for a student that she's taking in outpatient rehab as an internship, and they have a whole slew of internships that they offer in that segment as well. And then, of course, you have your behavioral health roles that you had mentioned. We have Stefan, is it Stefan that oversees the nursing roles? And so he recruits for the SNI roles. So what works best in terms of how the students can find out best about these opportunities? Is that the careers page? Is that getting in touch with the recruiter? What is the best route?
I think it's a little bit of both. It can be really challenging for me. I'm going to, my point of view, I recruit for behavioral health for Gateway. Right. That's one affiliate out of a bunch, right? We have, I think, around 15,000 employees at Lifespan. So I can give an overview of positions. I can always share a resume with the right recruiter. What I need is people to give me an idea about what they want to do. Sure. It's very challenging if somebody is like I was when I graduated without a clue, right? Because I'm unfortunately not a job coach. I can give some ideas. I can kind of give, maybe point you in the right direction, but I don't have the ability to kind of ask questions and be like, you should be this, so I would start with the career site, and with Lifespan in particular, but a lot of them are like that. There's keyword searches, and I would always suggest start using some ideas that you have, whether it's administrative or if it's behavioral health, and just kind of put those words in our keyword search, and you'll start seeing jobs pop up. And quite honestly, usually with these search engines, they're not going to always give you the exact thing that you want. They're going to give you more than less depending on your keyword search. But start reading some job descriptions and seeing if that's the right fit for you. I would say if you're not quite sure what you want to do, or what you want to do, but your skill set could go into different affiliates, different departments, different types of things. Try try to start there and really kind of maybe figure out what kind of roles that you're looking for. That's one way to start. And I would say apply. If you have, I'd even say most, maybe 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 of the requirements, apply. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you're not going to hear from anybody. The best thing that's going to happen is a recruiter is going to see your resume and be interested enough to try to hear more from you. Because a lot of times I'll see a resume for one position, but I'll be like, doesn't it quite have the skills for that or the degree or whatever, but maybe she'll be interested in something else. And that's a way in to start talking with a recruiter. And most of us know enough about what our colleagues are doing that we can at least give you a general idea.
Sure.
Another way is kind of what you're doing is you're talking with different managers. I'm going to put it back to you. How are you getting in touch with these people?
In touch with like Stefan and Elizabeth?
Yeah.
So Stefan was through you, and then Elizabeth was from a student had applied to the outpatient rehab section for a psychology related internship, and then Elizabeth and I have been chatting back and forth about that.
So you're networking.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And we try to do the best that we can to educate the students on that. But here it is, right? It's like, firsthand to show that this is actually something that works.
Exactly. And I mean, that's really what networking is just kind of, find one person and asking for help and asking, can you make an introduction? Can you point me in the right direction? Do you know anybody else who I could talk to? That's how you're really going to be able to do it. Right. And I would say it's cool to apply to different positions, but be cautious with that in one organization, because when we see somebody who's applied to maybe like 50 different positions and they're all different types of positions, it makes me think, like, what do you really want to do, right? So try to I would say just be cautious and just make sure it makes sense.
Thank you.
Ariane, I just want to repeat one of the things you said that I really appreciate, because a question that we commonly get is, well, I don't meet all of the requirements. So repeating what you said, hey, if you make 7 or 8 out of the 10, apply.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Anna, what was your question?
Oh, I just didn't know if you knew anything about like the start dates for like new nurses. I know they have like the critical care residency that I'm applying for, but I don't know if anything's like pushed back or if they're not doing like training for that right now.
I'm sorry, don't know on the nursing side. Just in general, there are some positions that we have pushed back start dates for.
Yeah.
A lot of it is we're constantly reprioritizing during this time of COVID. This is a unique situation. None of us have ever seen anything like it. So, I mean, I can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody who's being patient and graceful through this, because it's stressful for everybody, including you guys. I don't know the exact dates. If I could certainly ask your recruiter who you've been working with if they have any other information. But I would imagine that the timing on this is almost okay for you guys, I think, because most of you guys who are graduating, it's about a month from now. And should things progress in the way that we're hoping, I think within a month, things are going to settle down with COVID a bit. And I hope I'm not being too overly optimistic here. But by the time that kind of settles down, that's when you guys are going to be graduating. I think, we'll be able to get you started fairly soon after.
I'm gonna once again zero in on one of the things you said, because you just said patience, and I spoke to somebody earlier this week who is talking to a couple of different companies. One is in healthcare, one is in technology, and that person has been told, we are interested. You are a strong candidate. Be patient. And what does patience look like? Like, once again, like that comparison. If I'm an applicant on a typical day applying, when should I follow up versus if I'm patient now, what keeps you paying attention to me, but also allows me to be patient and not annoy you?
Yeah. So, I would say, first of all, everybody who I've talked to has been so kind and just like understanding, which is really helpful, because quite honestly, I think if anybody gave me an attitude right now, I probably wouldn't take it well. But most recruiters who are good recruiters, and I know that there's bad ones out there that give the whole industry, the whole career, a really bad rap. But I mean, I'm keeping in contact with I have a spreadsheet and handwritten notes just in case something goes wrong about every single candidate that I've spoken with over the past 5 weeks. We're not going to forget about you, but there's that fear, and I get it. So I would just say, realistically, if they said that they're not hiring now, that company's probably going to be waiting another few weeks until stay-at-home orders are lifted. So I would say, popping in with an email is probably going to be your best bet. I've received a bunch of emails from candidates, and I told them, like, if you get, feel free to email me anytime. And they've just kind of been checking in on me. Like, I know very kind. I know things are busy. Just want to let you know I'm still very interested. Short and sweet, and that's perfect. That's the best thing I would say. In a general time, if I'm trying to think, like, if a recruiter's maybe you've talked with them, maybe you saw them at a career fair, but you weren't quite, you wanted to wait till you graduated, or whatever they're hiring for was a few months off, I would do the same thing. A gentle email goes a long way. I've in the past have gotten phone calls, and it's like, I feel like there's a script almost, but people will say, I put my application in and I haven't heard from anybody. I'm like, well, I don't want to talk to you now either. And I get it that it's frustrating, but going in with an attitude or going in harsh is not the way to go. So I would really just be kind, just treat people how you want to be treated.
Ariane, I have a question for you, because I know you guys have a lot of the COVID response positions right now. But then I know there's also behind that, there's those full-time positions with Lifespan. Do you feel like, I mean, I don't want to say get your foot in the door, but get your foot in the door. Is a COVID response position, like at the convention center or something, that our students should be really trying to get in that way, or is that entirely separate than your full-time positions at Lifespan?
Well, it is separate, and I would say, and I've said this to everybody I've talked with, if you're not able to do it, if you don't want to do it for whatever reason, I don't need to know the answer. I get it. It's scary. Some of us have family members at home that we can't put at risk. Maybe it's ourselves that we don't want to put at risk. Not taking or pursuing those positions will not hurt you. We're not holding that against anybody. But I will say, those that I'm hiring, even the ones I know that I'm hiring already, I probably will be pursuing them afterwards, for a couple of reasons. One, this is the ultimate temp gig where you get to prove yourself. And if somebody's going to go to this position and do a great job, well, then of course we're going to want to hire them. Because I think that can speak volumes. But I can't express this enough, that for those of you that don't want to, whatever the reason is, it will not be held against you. It's, there's still a ton of hiring that will be going on afterwards. And all of us are in agreement on that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And one thing about can I just kind of add separately, try to avoid saying to recruiters that you just want to get your foot in the door, because our job is to find the right match for the position for our departments, for our companies, for the hiring managers. So we don't want to hear that. We want to hear that you're excited about the job or the opportunity. Okay. And the other piece about that, like Lifespan, for instance, requires a 1-year commitment in a position. A year's not a long time unless you're miserable, and then it's forever. So make sure that you're going to be happy with positions that you take. And I know that's not always possible, but avoid the "I want to get my foot in the door" conversation. Try to phrase it a different way.
Are there other red flags in the interview process that you see? So, wanting to avoid saying, "This is my stepping stone. I just want my foot in the door." All that shows me really looking at it as a temporary position. Are there other things that when you have that person in interview, you go, "Ooh, that just made a less likely candidate"?
Yes. I mean, you guys have all heard it, that talking negatively about prior jobs, prior bosses is a huge red flag. And you've probably heard it so much that you're bored of it, but we keep saying it because it keeps happening constantly. So that's definitely a red flag. Be diplomatic about it. We all understand that sometimes a past job isn't the right fit. That's probably why you're looking, but be kind and don't go into it, because that kind of shows us that you've got a bad attitude. Even if you don't, even if it's truly a toxic environment that you're trying to get away from, just find a way to be diplomatic about it. I know I keep saying that word. That's probably my number one. Two, I would appreciate if you didn't eat while you're on a phone interview with me. I can hear it. It's gross. Please stop. I personally don't care too much if a dog barks or a child is loud, especially on phone interviews. I mean, life happens. It's not the end of the world. But if you have a scheduled phone interview, and that's usually how you start with a recruiter, get to a quiet place. If you're outside walking around, all I can hear is wind and heavy breathing. If you're taking the call in the middle of a store, especially if we had it scheduled, I'm confused as to why you're not prepared for the interview. So those are a couple of them. Another one I would say is just make sure that you've done some research. You don't need to know every single thing about a company, but please don't ask us what we do. Have a good sense of it.
I have another question I'm really excited to ask, but I'm going to give it a second for someone else.
Ariane, for the field hospital positions that you're applying for, those are temporary. Do you have any idea in terms of the length of those, and if when those end, if there's an opportunity for that candidate to stay on with Lifespan in some capacity?
Yep. So we're asking for a 1 month commitment. I'm quite honestly hoping that I'm hoping we are doing all this work for nothing and we don't need the field hospital. That is the perfect case scenario. But more than likely we will need it. So we're asking for a month. I would say that, my plan is to talk with the hiring manager about midway to 3/4 of the way through and ask her what she thinks about the people that are working there and who would she recommend for hire, and try to get them positions. Because I think that's, it's a long interview. When I used to do temp staffing, we used to try to do a working interview. So rather than have a conversation, we would just send people to work, because what better way to see how well people are coached and how well they are at their jobs than to just have them do the job. So it's almost like that in a way.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the questions I thought was really good, there was a conversation the other day and an alum asked, right now, during a time where I can't go to different events, right now, how can I be networking effectively?
That's a good question. Ooh. LinkedIn is a place where we go, whether it's sometimes just to have some access to social media while we're on the job, but a lot of the times we are using it to find candidates. So I would do some posts on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does not have to. There's a lot of people that are like, this is LinkedIn, not Facebook, and I put fun stuff up all the time. I rip it off of Instagram and put it right on there, and I'm okay with it. So make yourself visible there. Another way is if there's any kind of networking groups that are part of what you're looking for. I would try to connect with them. A lot of them, I work with Rhode Island veterans, and I think I've noticed that a lot of those guys, I go to their events, but I've noticed that a lot of those guys have been reaching out to each other and posting other kind of, whether it's a Facebook group or whatever. So that's an option. If I don't know if you're into social work or if there's any other professional organizations that you can join that are part of your career path, that's where I would probably go as well.
Right.
Anyone?
So my name is Orion. I am a junior at URI. I entered this video conference 10 minutes after it began, and I was wondering, I have a couple questions I was wondering if I could ask you.
Yeah, please go for it.
Okay, so I am definitely looking for an internship right now. I'm a psychology major, so I want to do something that gets me some sort of clinical experience if possible. And so I heard you say on the Lifespan website to search like keywords. So I searched behavioral health, and it looked up. It said 1,000 results.
Probably.
So, yeah. So I was wondering where I should start. Like,
Send me an email. I support Gateway Healthcare. So the minute I heard you say psychology,
Awesome.
that was my answer. We unfortunately we don't post our internships online. So you kind of have to find a manager or a recruiter that can point you in the right direction. And let me take a look and let's have a conversation. But it will
Sure.
probably be next week because I still have a bunch of stuff to do tomorrow.
Okay, well, that's fine. Do you mind if I can take down your email right now?
Why don't we do that afterwards? Just because I have a long last name.
Okay.
I'll send it
I'll
out.
stay on.
Ariane, would you like me to post it?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Thank you.
I can do that.
We'll spend 20 minutes of me spelling it.
Orion, did you have other questions you said?
I would say probably not actually.
Cool. Well, looking forward to talking with you.
Of course, me too.
All right. I just put
Thank you,
out
thank
Ariane's email to everyone. What I would like to do, so we're right at 7:30. I know it's late. I'd like to do 2 more questions. Is that good? All right. 2 more questions, preferably from someone other than me.
Other than staff, you can.
And other than that, yeah.
I want to hear your super excited question. I want to know what it is.
So my super excited one that I thought was really good was the what do I do now to network? Because I mean, this is really, we advise people on networking. There's so many different ways, but some of us really thrive off that physical, either whether it's the happenstance, like we just happen to be talking to somebody at the grocery store, we happen to be in this classroom or went to this chamber event. But then we have to have this shift in really having a goal and practice. So I really appreciate Ariane's comments on get visible on LinkedIn. I mean, if you're not spending your energy in other areas, yes, we can use it to reach out, but we can also use it to just kind of be able to share fun and stuff that really might be more around our brand, what we want to talk about. And then I think the other groups that you can join. It's amazing. I was just talking about entrepreneurship the other day, and they're saying, hey, Venture Cafe is doing tons of online events. So I think these groups like Rhode Island Vets and like the specialty groups, they're probably doing some other stuff online, and that's a great resource too. I think that was terrific.
One thing I would say too, make a group with your fellow students, and refer them to jobs. If one of you gets a job, refer your friends. I kick myself every time I get off a phone call and don't say, do you know anybody else who would be interested too? I should always be asking for referrals, and I forget. Be proactive. Say to her, if you get an offer, say to a recruiter, if you're looking for anybody else, I know people. We would love it. You just made our job easier. Thank you.
One of the other questions that I thought was a really good one was around staying competitive. So really asking you, when you're looking at your candidates, what's the gap? What's the thing that's missing and how can I get it to be a really strong candidate when I apply to Lifespan?
I would say, obviously we're always looking for whatever the job description skill set is, right? If it's an administrative position and your resume is riddled with typos, that's going to be a challenge. If you're applying for a behavioral health position and there's typos, I'm probably going to let it pass, right? I care more about your compassion and your skills working with people, right? But to stay competitive, just try to find things that are relevant to any students that actually, no, not even just students, whether you're alum or anything, put your volunteer work on there and make sure you're volunteering. I love that stuff because my view is if you're willing to do stuff in your spare time to help people, well, then you're probably going to do a lot at your job. And I don't care if it's the job isn't within healthcare or if your job's, I don't know, an accountant, you're probably going to go above and beyond if you're the type of person that will volunteer. I would say, especially during this time, recruiters might start asking people, well, what did you do during the stay-at-home order? And, most of us, we're either like cleaning stuff, doing jigsaw puzzles and watching Netflix. But try to think of some other things too that are reasonable or interesting. I've got one friend that's trying to learn how to play the banjo again, and she's terrible, but you know what? That kind of makes me laugh. It shows me some personality if I asked her that. And I'm not saying that everybody go out and try to learn a musical instrument. And I'm also a big proponent of does not have to be the time where everybody's hustling to learn a new skill. Surviving is enough, but try to think of something. If there's maybe you started reading again, or that's could prompt another question about what were you reading? Do you have any good recommendations? The reason I'm saying this is because stuff like that is going to start making a relationship happen. If we're just having a regular conversation. Other things just in general that could kind of keep yourself competitive is really just brushing up on those skills, whether it's taking an online class. Certification programs can be good. They can also be kind of just another piece of paper. We've all taken those classes that are like, oh gosh, I got the paper. Don't know what I learned, but at least it shows an effort too, I'm trying to think of anything else. I'll let you know. I'll jump in again.
All right. I'm going to ask one final question and then we'll happily let you go and appreciate all this time. But one of the things that's sticking out to me is you've said a couple of times things that make me start thinking about fit. That you just made a comment about making the beginning of this relationship. And you made a comment earlier where you were talking about, I want those memorable stories. I want to know why you're getting into something. I want to know what you're doing during this downtime. And I'm not expecting it to be productive, but I want it to be interesting. Yeah. So how do I, as a candidate, navigate sharing stuff that is going to help with fit, but not cross that line and become, whoa, you just shared too much stuff. So how do I use that and open myself up, but do it in a professional manner?
Yeah. So, one of my old tricks is to kind of write things down before you go to an interview and practice out loud. You don't have to sit in front of a mirror. Go sit in your car, go for a drive, but it's good to get your muscle memory of your voice going. But maybe jot down some ideas about what you want to talk about, whether it's stuff that you did during the pandemic or just more generally, like stuff about your job or what you've done in college. Stay away from anything massively personal. I have heard everybody's stories about their divorces and the details surrounding that, and certain illnesses that I don't want to hear. You can talk about some of that stuff without going into detail. So say there's a gap in a resume because of a family issue, whether it's a divorce or sickness, you can just say short and sweet, I was focusing on my family, or I was caring for a family member, or I was recovering from an injury, and move on. Most of us understand that there's the story behind that. It's not our business to find out. So we're not going to push too hard on that. At best, I'll say, are you ready to get back for a 40-hour work week?
Okay.
So just be short and sweet about it, and realize that details are a little too much. If somebody's asking you about your hobbies or something, make sure that they're something that you would talk about in a professional environment. If your hobby is, I don't want to go too far into this conversation with examples because I'll probably mess up, but I don't know. Just something that would not send you to HR.
One of the things when it comes to that line, like we often talk about what's neutral, like sports. Sports are pretty neutral. You can talk about any sport pretty safe, but maybe when it comes to something that's politics, we kind of reserve that. That might be something that might be more divisive depending on who we're talking to.
Yes. I mean, I would say you guys kind of know what the big things that would send you to HR for a bad thing are. Stay away from those topics.
I would jump in really quick, Ariane, and say that I had a conversation today with my sister, who is 35 and was interviewing for a new job within her own healthcare company, actually, in marketing. And so she went in and she said she had practiced in her car and she was all ready to go. And the interview was a Skype interview or whatever. And to her, the first question was, "What is your spirit animal?" And she said, "A duck." Because she said, "Holly, I couldn't think of another animal." I said duck, and I've just ruined all my chances. And I said, "Well, how your recovery is probably better. Your recovery is going to speak more to it than the fact that you said duck, which was the stupidest thing you could have said." She's like, "Well, I'm pregnant." And I told him, I guess the cat's out of the bag. I'm pregnant and I waddle like a duck. And the guy at the end of the interview told her that he is going to remember this interview forever because of that. And I said, "I think you got the job. That's great." So sometimes I think it's important too, when you say something and you feel just terrible about what you said, and you're like, it actually could be something memorable if you can recover from it. So it's
absolutely
in that way. So it was just really funny to hear you say that after just having this conversation. So
yes.
Thanks for putting that out there.
I mean, a question like that,
duck, you'll be okay.
Yeah, there's no right answer to that question. It's all about trying to get somebody's personality to come out. Maybe it's an icebreaker to like lighten the mood because interviewing is stressful. So yes, like it's okay to laugh during an interview. We prefer it. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell her that tonight just to let her a little bit better.
Oh, all right. Any final questions for Ariane? Or comments? It is 7:00, or we started at 7:00 on a Thursday night. Thank you. This is definitely above and beyond regular working hours. And these days are long. So we greatly appreciate you supporting our students and our alumni, as well as I've been writing notes the whole time. So all these notes that I can go back and share with colleagues and our alumni and our students. Thank you, Ariane. I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Anytime. Hope to hear from some of you guys.
Hey, thank you very much. I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome.